Hello and welcome to the Progcast, and this week we're going to be reviewing Moonmadness by Camel. Will the guys get the hump? Does it sound anything like Oasis? Or is it all just a Nigel mirage? Let's find out! Alright guys, so yeah, we're looking at Moonmadness by Camel. This is an album from the 70s, and it was my choice. As always, the person who chooses the album absolutely loves it. So I'm going to try not to pour too much praise over it. Firstly, I'll ask you guys, well, do you guys know about Camel? Do you like their music? What do you think of the album?
Well, personally, I'm going to struggle there not to pour too much praise over it myself. It's
cynical.
No, I'm reasonable fan of Camel, not massively, I've got to say. It's not really my bag.
It's the music that defined prog.
Well, yes and no. I think it's quite symptomatic of a lot of prog, but I wouldn't say this. Well, I don't think it's a band that defined the genre, if you want. It's a band that's in the genre.
Yeah, but it's early on. It's 1976. So at that time, it probably didn't sound as cliche as it may sound to you now.
I know, but by that point, you'd already had. I mean, probably 69 to 72 was probably the peak where you'd had a lot of
4 years too late.
Yeah, but you'd already had a lot of the defining albums, like we were talking about Close to the Edge earlier. That was 73, 2, 3. There's a lot of stuff come through. You can't really say that this was 76 was a defining year for the genre. But that notwithstanding, I think Mirage is up there. It's one of my favourite albums. So obviously, Camel can deliver. Whether this does, it doesn't for me, I'm afraid.
Whether this does, it doesn't.
Well, I was going to do that kind of build it up and then reveal that conclusion.
I'd like a little bit of suspense, please, sir.
I'll give you a little bit of suspense.
Whether this one does, it definitely doesn't.
I might touch on that. I think I mentioned last week that I'm a proprietor of Spotify Free, which means that I get random tracks inserted by other bands.
What was it mixing in this time?
It was mostly mixing in other Camel tracks, so I kind of got a fair discography of Camel whilst listening to this particular album. And yeah, I really liked a lot of the stuff that I heard from the
other albums that we didn't pick to review. Excellent.
No, but I think well, we can start talking about it now. The style on this album is quite tight in the sense that throughout all the tracks the themes are very similar, whereas a lot of the other songs that came through randomly on Mirage, I think the guitar licks and the styles were a bit more different. Some were more punchy, some were more guitar driven, whereas I think this had a more homogeneous sound throughout the whole album.
Yeah, it's got a consistent atmosphere. That's what they've done. They've really well defined a certain feel and an atmosphere to the album, but unfortunately the
atmosphere you got is not one that you like.
It's just kind of pondering monotony. It just kind of weaves its way through, and it's pleasant enough. Fine. It's not. There's nothing offensive on it, but I think that's probably because they haven't taken too many risks with it. And it just goes through, and it's nice enough, and I don't have anything particularly against it, but it's much like an episode of Midsummer Murders, It's on, and it's fine, but I'm never going to, race home to watch it, I'm never going to buy a box set and think, yeah, this is, it's just... It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, I can see your point, and I think that Mirage would have been the obvious choice, but I wanted to choose one that wasn't maybe the most obvious Camel album, so we got a flavour of something other than that. So that is the obvious choice that you would go to, and if I was recommending Camel, I'd say just go for Mirage. It's a bloody good album.
Okay, but you've obviously picked this album. Why do you like it?
So I don't have those hang-ups. I know that it possibly is you could call it a cliche sound. It doesn't do anything particularly new. It sounds very 70s to me, but I like that. I think it sounds like a nice snapshot of how prog was in that era. And I particularly enjoy the fact that the tracks, to me, have been thought out really carefully so that they all fit into a cohesive album. I guess maybe that to you sounds boring, though.
I don't know if... I don't know when I was listening to it, I thought about where it fitted as a snapshot within the progression of prog.
So it sounds like a
progression of progression.
Sounds like a 70s drama that you can watch on TV.
It does, but so if I talk about just the vocals, the vocals throughout the whole album are that kind of very dreamy, far off, distant.
Far beyond the moon.
Well, exactly. It's that the themes are all kind of ethereal and nothingy. There aren't very strong hooks. I don't know whether that's by design. They didn't want to have any.
Because the hooks are in the flute.
Yeah, exactly. So the vocals are kind of for me were by the wayside. The flute were. I thought there just wasn't enough. Maybe this. Do you think this is by design? They decided not to have many hooks in the album, in the kind of sense that they didn't want to have just really catchy chorus bits and things that would keep you coming back. They just wanted to go for that kind of. We want to not a monotony, but
I suspect so. I mean, there's obviously different facets. You can have a hooky kind of album. You can have an atmospheric album. You can have a journey, a kind of progression album where it kind of builds and kind of ebbs and flows and that kind of thing. And I think they've definitely gone for the atmosphere. I don't think you have to have one at the expense of the other. And my favourite albums have maybe all three of those aspects to them. That kind of brings it together.
But I think it does build. I think that you've got a lot of floaty, ethereal stuff. You've got some gentle melodic guitar. And then kind of around towards 3/4 of the way, it comes into that more drilling rock tune. What's it called? Another Night.
Another Night, yeah.
And that has a really strong riff that you can pick up on, a repeated phrase. Yeah, it's not a vocal chorus, but it is a theme or a motif that to me is really strong. It's got a great rhythm to it, and it comes out of all of that empty flute and haunting stuff.
I just have to disagree.
You just don't like that riff.
No. It's fine, but I think in the context of the album it stands out. But
because the album may be drilly.
Yeah,
okay.
That's my opinion, yeah.
I think the vocal point that you make is a very good point, and Camel are one of those bands where the vocals are essentially functional. The vocals carry a melody, but they're definitely one of the weaker points in terms of the musicianship that you have there.
They should have just snow goosed it and done another instrumental.
Well, that's probably why they did. Snow Goose after this or before this?
Before.
Yeah, so that's the thing. The vocals have some effects on them and echoes on them, and I presume that's to cover up the fact that it's basically a threadbare vocal melody, isn't it? It is. They are weak vocals, but to me, I can look past that, and I just think the vocals use like another voice here, and the melody that the vocals are singing is nice. It's just that the delivery's not. It's not stellar, but it's just another instrument. The flute's carrying melody, and the vocals are functionally carrying melody. Nobody ever went to see Camel to listen to the fucking vocals.
No, I would. I mean, the vocals do take a lot of criticism if you read like online reviews of this, which I think is probably. I wouldn't raise that as an issue, but I would say that I find in this album there's very rarely more than one thing going on at once. So they might have the guitars come to prominence with, with very nice guitar.
Yeah.
But then the rest of it, the bass is just the bass is quite boring, I find.
What about the boo, boo?
But it's just like, let's find a bass line and stick with that for it. It's like, okay. And then I think the poor vocals for me just add to that there's never a moment where it's like, well, the guitar's doing something really interesting and the vocals are doing something else interesting and the drums are doing, there's never that multiple things.
Yeah, I think that you're sort of saying that possibly it's too simple almost, is it?
Well, this is where it comes to my prejudice that probably my favourite prog band is Yes, which is the exact opposite. It's so busy. There's so many things all at once.
Yeah.
Chuck it all in. There's so much to concentrate. It's almost like kind of hyperactive. Whereas this is the exact opposite, and it's kind of more space. More.
This is considered, isn't it? It's really carefully considered, and the parts are plucked. It doesn't. You're right. You've not got that Steve Howe unhinged. Lots of ripping things going on.
Sorry. So an element of this is my just preference.
Yeah.
My aesthetic preference is not for this kind of thing. So, but I mean that if you're looking to listen to that, and that sounds like your kind of thing, then I can appreciate why.
I think it just sounds very pleasant. I like the fact that they've used really good dual guitar harmonies, some melodic guitar, the use of the flute, and I think that there is a lot of dynamics in this album. I don't find that I'm left too low before anything kicks in. I kind of like the dynamism there and the atmosphere that it generates. But there are some interesting musical motifs here. If you listen to some of the drum rhythms, you've got those odd syncopated rhythms that I came to love from bands like Pendragon. Like where you put the emphasis at the end, and I see this as being an early influence of some of those bands that use really weird syncopated drums, but it's all kept really tightly under wraps. It never goes into that unhinged thing. Say, like you might get from Beardfish. It all feels. It is roughly all in the same style actually, just different emotions in that style maybe, and that's probably where it seems too unadventurous to you.
Yeah, maybe I just lack the appreciation of subtlety. I'm sure that wouldn't be the first person to claim that criticism.
All marzipan and no sponge.
Well, no, we've been spoiled. We've been spoiled because if you look at some of the modern bands that we're listening to, like Haken or Beardfish, or even Yes, those are absolutely delicious, crazy, unhinged things. And maybe it is hard to go back to these albums from the 70s.
Yeah, but something like Gentle Giant has all of that stuff in it. It's from exactly the same.
Yes, but it's actually,
era.
but that has none of the musical motifs and palatability of this, and it's actually quite unpleasant in a lot of places.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But that's where this is.
What I'm saying is, I don't think we can blame that on the era when it was produced. It's the style of music.
I think they made a conscious choice, as you say, to kind of have a focus on a particular instrument. I don't know. This is always my shtick. I think it's to do with drugs, right? If you're high, then you don't want too much going on because it's not linked to a pleasant experience. Whereas, if part of the experience is about being able to focus on particular aspects of the soundscape or not have too much going on, then you don't want too much.
So if you're a cool drug user like you guys, then you might like it. Whereas like an uptight narc like me,
having Wikipedia a lot of articles about drug use, I think that this is what the kind of thing people would enjoy. But interestingly, there are elements where they do kind of deviate from just that not wishy-washy, but
hang on, not too strong.
I think Chord Change was probably my favourite song on the album.
Great name for a track.
Great name for a track. Doesn't really... Well, yeah, anyway. And there they do actually kind of develop some of the motifs a bit. There's a bit of progression within the song. That's one thing I would say, that progressive music can sometimes just be, oh, here's a long instrumental section, and here's some like loose synth. For me, progression means, oh, you have an idea and you develop it throughout the song.
Yeah, I think...
But I don't think they do that very much here, except on a couple of songs, and Chord Change.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned Chord Change, because it's almost what Alan was saying. That's the song where they did away with it. Maybe the vocals are what's holding it back, because that song they just didn't have any vocals, and you've got that and it's dynamic and moving. Maybe it is the fact that the vocals are too functional and held the songs back. Maybe I can't help but hear the Top Gear theme tune. It's that same sort of springy, trebly, reverby Gibson sound, isn't it? That clean Gibson sound.
I've got here the Allman Brothers Band. Yeah,
is that who did the Top Gear? It's so Top Gear. Maybe it was ripped off from Top Gear. Yeah, that's a good choice of track. But that one does sound progressive. Do you like that track?
It all merges into a bland kind of...
Oh, for God's sake. If you don't like that one, you're not going to like anything on it.
Lunacy at the end of the 9-minute instrumental, I agree, but some of the other stuff...
You love a long, overwrought instrumental at the end.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, interestingly, the songs are named after characters from the band.
Is that interesting?
No.
I genuinely think that's the most boring concept I can imagine.
The point is,
I could write a bloody biography, but no one's going to want to read it.
The point is that whoever got Chord Change has got the most dull personality of... You know, that song's going to be great about you. Rhythm.
That's really damning, isn't it?
Yeah, Chord Change. I wouldn't want my song to be that.
But didn't they... Hopefully they wrote their own songs, right? Or is this write a song about your friend?
It's like Rumours by Fleetwood Mac.
This one's called Your Shit at Guitar.
Your vocals are not very good.
This one's called
probably holding the band back.
Thin vocals on the waters.
No chord change.
Chord fuck up.
Very good.
Oh dear. So... Yeah, maybe just not entertaining enough for you guys. I feel sorry that I picked this now. I thought you'd see all of its subtle elegance.
Nah, it wasn't as schizophrenic as my tastes generally enjoy.
All right.
I'd say the quality of the sound is very good.
It is.
Like,
it's
it's aesthetically very pleasing, and it's the kind of prog album you could have on in the background of a dinner party.
It's lovely.
That's exactly my problem with it. I want an album that makes you sit up and listen.
Exactly.
Choke on your mashed potato.
I think I said to you before, I had to focus and sit down when I listened to it and write notes, because it's by definition it's very dreamy, so it almost
you do slip through half the album before you realise.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But if you want to talk about it in a sort of coherent way, you have to say, well, what's that bit actually like? Oh, I've skipped half that song because I was zoned out, and maybe that's what they were going for. But
I find it.
You're sure you weren't on drugs?
But I find it's nice to get into a space. Sometimes Haken and stuff is really hard fucking work. You know, Beardfish is quite hard work, and sometimes Yes is too. Yeah. It's constantly racing. There is a place for music that's more atmospheric and quiet and relaxed, and I find it fits that nicely. But it's just a taste thing, possibly, isn't it? I don't think it's a bad quality album by any standards.
Well, I will say that this is ranked on Prog Archive as the 17th best progressive rock album of all time. So I think it's me. I think it's me that's.
It's you that's wrong.
Yeah. No.
Where's Beardfish Sleeping in Traffic? Is that on there?
It's below, well below.
Well,
so yeah,
you didn't even have to tell me that, and you've kind of vindicated me now.
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
it's just opinion, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just opinion. So I think you're probably kind of in the middle of me and Ali a bit there.
I kind of appreciate the musicianship maybe a bit more, and as I said, when I have my next dinner party, I probably will have this on in the background.
Any more comments to add? No. Well, I personally would recommend this one. I think it sits nicely in Camel's library. It's no Mirage, but it's a nice, fluty, quiet album. Cheers.